Okay, call a meeting to order. Good evening, everyone. My name is Richard Stewart. I'm the mayor of Coquitlam, and I call this meeting to order. My apologies right off the bat. Our closed meeting went a little bit longer than anticipated, and so my apologies for starting late. I'll go straight to Mr. Clerk.
Thank you, Your Worship. Our first item to evening is a presentation. It concerns the St. John's Ambulance Lifesaving Award. It's a presentation to Sheri Greenwood.
And this is a real pleasure. So before we get started with regular council business, I'd like to take a moment on behalf of City Council to recognize the important work our recreation staff do every day. My beginnings with the city, I worked in Parks and Recreation as a lifeguard and otherwise, and this moment was, we all must recognize the value that this moment has for a staff person and for one individual member of our community. The on-site facility staff members of our facilities are the front line. They help our visitors in so many ways. Today, we recognize Sheri Greenwood, a senior care assistant at Dogwood Pavilion. Back in January, Sheri helped save the life of a Dogwood Pavilion patron, Dolores Forsyth. Today, Sheri is receiving the St. John Ambulance Life-Saving Award. Here to present the award is Dame Marion Mackenzie. She's the Provincial Administrative Officer of St. John Ambulance, BC and Yukon Council. Also with us this evening is Shea Viswanathan, Manager of St. John Ambulance Tri-Cities Branch. Thank you both for being here. I'll ask them to step forward. There they are. And there's a podium on that table. I'll hand it to you. Yeah, Dolores, come on up.
Before we present this, I just want to give you a little bit of a heads up of how this awards came about. There are 3 levels, and the gold level is if you put your life in danger when you're attempting to save or save somebody's life. The silver level is like if you're out in a snowstorm and you stay indefinitely to try and attempt to save somebody's life, or if you were in a facility like Dogwood Pavilion, where Sheri was, which is the bronze level. And I see a fireman there, so he would know, but people think, oh, Sheri saved somebody who had a heart attack. No, Sheri did not save somebody who had a heart attack. Sheri saved somebody who had a cardiac arrest. That is different than a heart attack. Arrest means the heart isn't going. And we all know what that means when your heart isn't working. That is what Sheri did. And I just want to thank her for, in her own free time, going and taking this kind of courses so that if she was in that presence, she'd be able to do what she did. I also want to thank the council for their foresight for having an AED on site, because definitely with an AED in conjunction with the CPR, you have a better chance of survival. And I know they're not cheap. I know you paid somewhere in the vicinity of $3,000 for it. All right, so I'm going to turn this over now to Shea, who will read the citation.
So Sheri, I present to you our life-saving certificate, and it says here, to Sheri Greenwood, who on January 22nd, 2015 in Coquitlam, British Columbia, used her first aid skills to save a life, Dolores' life, an employee at a local senior center was alerted by a member of the center that a woman had suddenly collapsed. Sheri called 911 and went to the aid of the unconscious casualty. Sheri immediately began CPR. The AED was brought to the scene and set up. Following instructions, Sheri administered one shock. The casualty regained a pulse. Emergency services arrived and took over. The casualty was transported to hospital without this life-saving intervention, the casualty may not have survived. Sheri Greenwood is to be commended for her quick response and her knowledge and use of first aid in saving a life.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sheri.
Thank you.
We've got a
Before I leave, can I say, I want to tell you how we get this. It's not something that comes locally. I had to get the fire department's letter, what was happening when they got there. I had to get a letter from somebody who saw what happened in the very beginning. It went to the provincial office, who sent it to Ottawa, and they went through a review board to decide whether it met the criteria for a life-saving award. So this award came from the national office from Ottawa. Okay, thank you.
You tried to get away.
Oh, good one, Chris.
Ready? Yeah. The wrestler in him. Look at that, the professional photographer stands back.
That's right.
Now, I'm going to say this. Sheri is nothing special. Sheri is, like all of our staff, incredibly dedicated, but I thank you very much, Sheri, for stepping in, for having taken the appropriate training, and for being there for Dolores. When I went up and spoke with Dolores, she said, Sheri is so special. She's my guardian angel. As was commented, we do have AEDs in most of our facilities, and someone says they're expensive. If you want to look over at Dolores, she's worth all of those $3,000. Good to have you here, Dolores. Thank you very much, Sheri. Mr. Clerk.
Thank you, Your Worship. Item 2 is our second presentation of the evening. This is a presentation to Gayle Statton, who's the president of the Coquitlam 2016 55+ BC Games Host Society.
Where is she? Right there. Oh, there she is. Okay, good. Okay. Sorry, she's right in the front row. So I'm going to, we'll do it again here. On behalf of Council, I'm very pleased to welcome and thank the community volunteers who have stepped up as our BC Games Host Society Board of Directors for the Coquitlam 2016 55+ Games. The board will work to ensure that Coquitlam 2016 55+ BC Games are successful for the athletes, the volunteers, the coaches, and the larger Coquitlam community. Coquitlam is very lucky to have Gayle Statton. I'll actually put a period on the end of that. Now, Coquitlam is also very lucky to have Gayle Statton, who's been so involved in so much of our community sports, to serve as our president of the Coquitlam 2016 55+ BC Games. Gayle has a long history of both participation and volunteerism in sport, including roles as president of the Coquitlam Metro Ford Soccer Club, chair of the Tri-Cities Youth Soccer Association, and as a committee member of the Coquitlam Sports Council and Coquitlam Field Sports Associations. The Coquitlam 2016 55 Plus BC Games Society is working on sport and venue selection to be announced later this fall. We're very excited to be the host community of the 2016 Games, and Council is absolutely confident that the board will help us deliver a fantastic games for our 55 plus athletes, their families and friends, and for our entire community to enjoy. These games will also be a wonderful addition to our Coquitlam 125th anniversary celebrations. Again, on behalf of Council, thank you, Gayle, and all the board members. And now we're going to actually have Gayle come up. There'll be I have to present to her something that was given to me. Oh, yeah. I recently attended the closing ceremonies of the 55 Plus Games 2015 in North Vancouver. I barely made it there because it was the day of the windstorm, and I had to manage to get all the way from here to North Vancouver among all the fallen trees and in a Prius, which doesn't go over trees very well. But we made it, and we accepted on behalf of our community the flag for the 55 Plus Games, and it was presented to me. It's been securely held in this hermetically sealed piece of plastic, and I will now present it to Gayle. Oh, sorry. You want to do this like formally? Okay. I would have been fine. You can't get away with that. Hey, just a photo. There we go. I folded it myself.
All right.
Okay. And this will be my first call for competitors. Coquitlam wants to have 3,000 55 plus competitors from Coquitlam, in addition to 3,000 from the rest of the province. And so please, I think most of council, most of council, the majority of council is eligible, and I have already committed that I will be competing in the 55 plus games. It'll be my first BC Games since 1978, when I was in the first BC Summer Games in Penticton, the very first BC Summer Games in 1978. And so please come on out. We've had offers from members of council already, and Brent has already agreed that he's going to be in the horse riding event, the equestrian events, and
Thank you, Mayor Stewart.
And we're still working on a competition for singing for Councillor O'Neill.
How low can you go?
There you go. So please, give it some thought. I'm going to try swimming myself or cycling, and there's lots of opportunities. We want all of our residents to be fit and to be challenged and to give it your best shot. So come on out in 2016. We're also looking for volunteers. So if you've already passed your physical prime, volunteering is also an option.
2 more members for the board. 2 more members.
Oh, and we're also looking for 2 more members for the board as well, yes. Well, we've got lots of opportunities to share your skill set with Coquitlam residents. This is going to be an amazing event. We got to see in North Vancouver an amazing organization. I saw it again last year in Langley and in previous years around the province. The last time we hosted the Senior Games, as it was known then, was in 1991, our 100th anniversary. But time has come. We're 25 years older and a lot better, and we're gonna do a great job. So please come on out and join in. Okay, enough. Mr. Clerk, save me.
Be my pleasure. Perhaps what we can do is we can, with the permission of council, I'd like to bring forward item 9, which pertains directly to the 55 Plus BC Games Host Society. And so if you just let me progress to that item through our slides.
You would have put it up.
Item 9 pertains to the Coquitlam 2016 55 Plus BC Games Host Society update. The staff recommendations that council expressed their thanks to the Coquitlam 2016 55 Plus BC Games Host Society and Board of Directors for their contributions on behalf of the community.
Moved by everybody, seconded by Councillor Hodge. We'll go Councillor Asmussen and Councillor Hodge. Any debate on this one? I suspect not. With our deep thanks, all in favor, all opposed. That is carried unanimously. Thank you. Where do, actually, Brunette or, well, anyone, if you want to, a question has been posed and I'd be willing to waive procedure and allow someone to speak from the microphone for 2 minutes about where one volunteers and how one becomes engaged in the games. This microphone over here.
Right at the front.
At the podium there, that'd be great.
Front and center.
Appreciate it.
The microphone?
That's the microphone. It doesn't look like it.
Okay. Thank you. We are in the preliminary stages, just setting the board up. So we haven't had a lot of meetings. So in terms of volunteering, there is on the Coquitlam website, so thank you, an area where you can actually sign up to volunteer. It is a bit early, so it's a bit of hurry up and wait in terms of what level of volunteerism that you're interested in. If you're interested in a board position, those are happening now. If you're interested in a chair position, those are happening now. If you're interested in a few hours or hosting or participating in a sport, etc., that's a bit down the road. But please feel free to use the Coquitlam website at this time until the games website is set up. And just while I'm here, I want to thank City Council for helping us with the nominations for the board and also for nominating me. I'm not sure I'll always be thankful of you doing that, but at this point I am, and obviously for supporting such a great event. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Gayle, and again, thank you for the commitment that you've shown in accepting and for being gentle when you're mad at us later. Thank you. Mr. Clerk. It's already up.
Next item, item 3, concerns the minutes of the public hearing held on Monday, September 28th. The staff recommendation that these minutes be approved.
Moved by Councillor Marsden, seconded by Councillor Cirillo. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Item 4 is minutes of the regular council meeting held on Monday, September 28th. Recommendation to approve.
Moved by Councillor Marsden, seconded by Councillor Towner. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Item 5 is consideration of fourth and final reading of zoning amendment bylaw number 4548 and development permit authorization for 3404 Roxton Avenue. This This will permit 3 small village single-family and 2 large village single-family residential lots and 6 street-oriented village homes. Staff recommendation is that council give fourth and final reading to City of Coquitlam Zoning Amendment Bylaw number 4548, and that council approve the signing and sealing of this development permit, and the mayor and city clerk be authorized to execute it.
Moved by Councillor Hodge, second by Councillor Marsden. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you. In the report, it talks about the SPIA and how the proponent will enhance what was already required, and I was just wondering what that enhancement might entail.
Mr. Johansson.
Yes, good afternoon, Your Worship and Council. Through Your Worship to Councillor Wilson. If you look at attachment 4, the answer to your question, right now, as you know, Roxton pulls through to Coast Meridian and is a part of the Green Street proposal. That will be closed. There'll be a 3-meter path put in there, and as part of that, there'll be plantings, native plantings added in there as part of the QEP's recommendations. There will also be fencing set up at the edge of the SPIA boundary. So those, at a high level, those are the enhancements that are being brought forward.
That's not something that we normally require?
With applications that where there is a stream setback required or identified in the OCP environmental area, a QEP is brought into the process to make recommendations about how far the setback should be, what kind of additional plantings or enhancements that could be made. Yes.
Fence and that sort of thing.
The fence is a typical approach to keep people out of the SPIA.
I guess when I read enhancements, I thought it was over and above. Okay, the other question was at the public hearing, it was my understanding that the 6 row houses don't have basements, correct?
I believe so, yeah. They're on slab. They do not have suites.
We had talked about potentially, because of the orientation of the garages, that there could be attic access in the garage for storage. I'm assuming that didn't go anywhere because it's not as part of this 4th reading. We were just talking about ways to give them more storage because they didn't have basements, and there's such parking issues.
Yeah, at this point, it looks like that that hasn't been incorporated, but it is noted for future applications.
Thanks.
Thank you. I actually had a question on our first Green Street ever. Several of us have visited the site and noticed the challenges associated with visitors parking, and commented, at least I've commented, and I know Councillor Asmussen commented as well, I think, at one point, that where it might have been helpful if the full cross-section of, in this case, Roxton, but in that case, a different street, obviously, if the full cross-section was available as parking, so essentially shorten the Green Street by 16 feet or 5 meters, and allow 4 parking spaces in the road width there where essentially some visitor parking. If we had done that on the other site, right now there is a sort of one unofficial space because it's set back about 8 feet. There isn't any reason to have set it back like that. It would have been nice to have set it back 16 feet. I just wondered if that had been contemplated, extending the pavement of Roxton westward by 16 feet to allow 4 spaces of visitor parking, which are at a premium on the mountain. Mr. Johansson.
Yes, through Your Worship. I wasn't involved directly in the early stage of this, but I know there was some back and forth about the location of, the eastern extent of the Green Street relative to the lanes, access to the north and the south, and also driveway access for the properties to the north. I know there was a lot of discussion about ensuring that fire trucks could get in and out of the lanes unencumbered. So that may have played into the design that shows right now without having parking. On that note, however, as you identified, visitor parking, of course, is very important up in Burke Mountain. And this proposal has a primary access lane segment running north-south. between Darwin and the lane that's between Roxton and Darwin that will allow some on-lane parking and still allow vehicles to get past as per our traffic operations parameters. The RTM1 lots as well, even though they're only required to have one spot per unit, they have a garage space, they have a parking pad space, and they also have a driveway between the garage and the lane, which allows for another space. So for those 6 units, conceivably, you could have 18 spaces. But again, the tandem isn't official. And also on the Darwin bulb, cul-de-sac bulb, there'd be an opportunity there for 3 to 4 spaces as well.
Okay. We ran into actually problems with the lane side parking on our first Green Street, given that the adjacent property owner claimed it as his own, and then we ended up with that conflict. So I don't disagree with providing it there. I'm still wondering, surely it wouldn't obstruct any fire equipment at all to provide 16 feet of additional paving. It would actually perhaps even help in some circumstances. It would allow a fire truck, should those spaces be empty, to back up and tee rather than, so I'm just putting it back. I'm not suggesting we hold up the development permit, but it might be something that we encourage in the future and perhaps even contemplate asking this proponent to.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great point. We will definitely take that back to the applicant and noting it is something you have to be very careful about on the lanes in terms of signing it, and sometimes even though it's a public right-of-way, the ownership sometimes can be up in the air. So yeah, we will definitely work with the applicant to see what we can do there on the east end of the Green Street.
Okay, Councillor O'Neill.
Yes, thank you very much. Just now the applicant is going to be building the Green Street, but am I correct? Is the city going to maintain the Green Street? Is that correct?
Through your worship to Councillor O'Neill, yes, that is correct. Okay. Both transportation engineering and Parks Rec and Culture have been actively involved in the discussion proposal. And once it's constructed, it would become a tangible capital asset to the city and maintained as per.
Good, okay. Now, I also at the west end of the Green Street, there's going to be a little seating area, and I understand a piece of public art that will also be provided by the applicant. Does the city have any input on the public art that's going to be installed?
Through to Councillor O'Neill, yes. I believe that there would be discussions between Parks, Rec and Culture and the applicant. I think we'd be looking at something regarding enhanced landscaping, seating, some sort of climbing structure similar to what might be at the Watkins Street, Green Street.
I was speaking about the piece of art that I think is going to be going there. Public art, I think it talked about. Did it not?
Yes, and actually I think the GM of Parks, Rec and Culture might have a few comments about that.
Yeah.
Mr. Eloiva.
Thank you. Through the chair, the preliminary plan does show a potential location for public art. At this point, however, we haven't yet really assessed the final design of the park and whether that should be an art piece or should be a structure of some form. We're still working through that. We certainly are entertaining that possibility, and if the applicant is amenable to provide that. We don't have any funding specific for this, so it would have to be provided by the applicant. We would do a determination as to what kind of public art could be suitable because it's a small park, so we really have to be careful. We're open to that. What we'd be looking for through the planning department would be a commitment from the applicant that they're prepared to do something, and then we would take that back and do an assessment. We do have a public art policy that we would look at in terms of guiding some of the opportunities here.
Right, good. And then at that stage, whatever is put in there, that is maintained by the city as well, henceforth.
Through the chair, that is actually correct.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no other speakers. Motion is fourth and final and a development permit. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Next item, item 6, is a development permit authorization and final readings to official community plan map amendment bylaw number 4559, zoning text amendment bylaw number 4558, and zoning map amendment bylaw number 4560. This is for a mixed-use, high-density development at 655 North Road and 515 to 525 Foster Avenue. Staff recommendation is the following. The council give fourth and final reading to City of Coquitlam official community plan map amendment bylaw number 4559. Fourth and final reading to City of Coquitlam zoning text amendment bylaw number 4558. Fourth and final reading to City of Coquitlam zoning map amendment bylaw number 4560. And approve the signing and sealing of development permit 4655 North Road and 515 to 525 Foster Avenue, and that the mayor and city clerk execute it.
Moved by Councillor Asmussen, second by Councillor Marsden. Councillor O'Neill.
Yes, just one question about, I certainly see there'll be a housing agreement bylaw dealing with a 57-unit market rental building. During the course of the discussion about this project, we asked the developer a few times about the availability of rental units in the 3 condominium towers, in light of the fact that when some condo councils come into being, they limit the amount of rentals suites that would be available. And I know many of us on council asked that that the developer make some stipulation going into this that I think this declaration or something, that I can't remember the exact technical words for it, that would guarantee that all of the units in all the 3 condo towers would be available for rental as well. I can't see a reference to that in this report. I wonder if somebody on staff can speak to that issue for me, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Johansson says he's willing.
Oh, good. I'd like to hear from him then. Thank you.
Yes, through your worship to Councillor O'Neill. Yes, the first reading report in that public hearing, the applicant did note that they would be filing a rental disclosure statement under the Strata Property Act to ensure that strata rentals would be allowed in the 3 residential towers for the life of the buildings, and that is still the case.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Councillor Asmussen.
Well, thank you very much. I like this proposal, and I want to point out that one of our issues always around this table concerns parking in every area of the city. And at third reading, there was a desire for a 5% reduction, but they've come back now and are not taking a 5% reduction, but are providing all the parking that's required in the bylaw, and also all the bike parking that's required in the bylaw. So I'm very pleased to see that adjustment made, and I want to thank them for making that adjustment in their design at this stage. Thank you.
Councillor Wilson.
On page 6 of the report, it talks about the variances, and the first one, reducing the setback from Foster Avenue. And then it talks about why we are supporting those variants, and it says that it brings the building closer to the street, creating a strong street presence. Well, if we want them close to the street, why do we have the setbacks? And isn't this... Why don't we just change the bylaw if we really... It just kind of bugged me that, you know, we could rationalize just about anything here, but I'm assuming the setbacks are there for a reason.
Yeah, they also want it higher so that the building could be higher.
Yes, yes.
Mr. Johansson, please explain that.
Yes, through your worship to Councillor Wilson. Good question. With a multi-phase project with the tower and podium and with the amenity building and the townhouses, and looking at the overall site design, I think that's there was an effort to stagger the towers on the site, so there wasn't a line of them along Foster all in one vertical plane, so to speak. So part of the design was to stagger the towers, and that resulted in some of the lower parts of the project, like the townhouses, being in the places that they're proposed. And also the spacing between the towers is further than what is typical. It's about 100 feet. Our minimum is 80 in the bylaw. So again, with a big project like that, sometimes there are those, relatively minor changes to setbacks. And in order to facilitate this development, there's quite a parking garage, as you can imagine, underneath. And with the design of the parking garage, the walls are pretty much right up to the property line, and some of the stairwells that will be coming up, the placement of those relative to building columns and circulation and elevator cores and that sort of thing, some of them are actually closer than the regular bylaw setback. So that's part of it. And I would say that the site that has the variances, proposed variances, also is surrounded on all four sides by a road right-of-way or future road right-of-way of 20 meters. So we feel it's supportable because the massing impact isn't like you would have a building directly adjacent to another one. So that's the explanation.
That's a much better explanation than what I read, so thanks. Nothing against you, Michael. Sorry. My other question was the housing agreement. It talks about, establishes that the building is to provide only market rental housing for the life of the building. And I'm just wondering, does that limit it from providing subsidized housing down the road, or
In other words, does the word market belong in there?
Through your worship to Councillor Wilson and to your worship, it does not limit that possibility. What it does is it secures it rental, purpose-built rental for the life of the building.
So maybe purpose-built would be a better word than market rental?
Good suggestion.
That was your suggestion. Thank you. And then my last point on this is I'm in support of this project. I think it'll work out well. I think it's a very beautiful project. From a public standpoint, it's a little difficult sometimes when developers already advertising the development before we've actually given it fourth reading. And I just worry sometimes that the community looks at that and just thinks that council just rubber stamps things. And we already have that perception in our community sometimes. And so I would prefer in the future if developers could hold off from advertising these projects until it passes fourth reading. But that's just my own personal bias. Thanks.
Indeed, indeed. Councillor Reid.
Just on attachment 7, I thought I checked this before, but there's loading zones in 2 buildings, but not in the front building facing North Road, unless I'm missing it.
Through your worship to Councillor Reid, Mr. Dollywall has the answer.
For the building on North Road, the loading is in the underground parkade, not on the surface.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Cirillo.
Oh, just clarification on one item on page 6, section 2, about buildings per lot. I note that we're looking for a variance on buildings per lot in advance of a change to the bylaw coming to public hearing on October 26th. So I just want to, am I understanding that correctly, that we are asking the public for their input on the change to this bylaw on October 26th, but 2 or 3 weeks before that, we're going to be passing a variance? Am I understanding that correctly? We're going to pass something before we have a public hearing on it?
Mr. Johansson.
There's the mic. Through your worship to Councillor Cirillo, this variance in the report here is specific to this property. So that that stipulation has been brought forward as a part of this this package. The public hearing is being held on more of an update to the zoning bylaw to reflect the current use of the zone in the TDS areas. So it's being brought forward as a part of this package. So it's not, it is, in terms of the numbers of units per lot, it's similar to what's in the bylaw at the October public hearing, but this one is specific to this property.
Okay, so when the bylaw comes for public hearing on October 26th, what is the number that we're using for units? Because right now it's 230 in the bylaw. This one is asking for 603. So what is coming as a suggestion on the October 26th public hearing for a number?
Through your worship, Michael Doywall, planner. The housekeeping bylaw will be looking to remove this clause altogether from the zoning bylaw. It was inadvertently missed in 2012.
Well, I thank you for that. It's difficult for me to understand the implications right now of removing the maximum units per hectare, but I mean, I'm stuck because I know a public hearing's coming in a couple of weeks, and I've already potentially had to make a decision. So I'm.
If I may clarify, the updates to the zone also resulted in a floor area ratio being brought forward, which limits the density on any particular property, and that allows for variation in terms of unit size, unit numbers, that sort of thing. So that's why the units per building is being proposed to be removed here. And
Okay, that makes sense.
yes,
Thank you.
Okay. No other speakers. The motion is fourth and final reading and a development permit for Foster and North. All in favor? All opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Next item, item 7, is an official community plan amendment bylaw number 4602 and a zoning amendment bylaw number 4603. This is for a proposed elementary school at 3438, 3441, 3450, 3451, 3460, and 3461 Queenston Avenue. Staff recommendations that council give first reading to City of Coquitlam OCP amendment bylaw number 4602. First reading to City of Coquitlam zoning amendment bylaw number 4603. In accordance with the Local Government Act, the council considered bylaw 4602 in conjunction with the city's 5-year financial plan bylaw, which is 4545, and the regional solid waste management plan. And finally, that bylaw number 4602 and bylaw number 4603 be referred to public hearing.
I will take Councillor Asmussen's motion. We've been waiting 6 years for this. You can wait till the end of the reading of the bylaws. And I'll give second to Councillor Hodge. The two fellows that live up on the hill and whose neighbors have been screaming for this school. Councillor Asmussen.
Well, I'm very glad to see that we're moving forward. We want to hear from the province on their funding announcement for this, and we're still waiting to hear that. The one thing I threw to staff and Mr. Alueva is, do we have full access to all the parking when this school site is going to be built?
Ooh, we're nowhere near development permit. We don't.
That's just an issue.
Yes, through the chair, we do have a direction and we have an agreement with the school district 43. We're working on that agreement, and there's some representatives of SD 43 here today. That agreement does grant the city use of the parking lot for the joint school park facilities here. So we would have access for the use of the park and our components within the school itself as well.
That's very good news, because we do have issues around the city right now, and Councillor Hodge has documented some of them around. I'll let him speak more on that. But we do still need some better cooperation on parking lots for our community use, and reducing the amount of vehicles on streets and neighborhoods. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Hodge.
Well, thank you. It's nice to see this moving forward, and thank you to all the staff and the school district and staff and everybody who's got it to this point. And I certainly look forward to hearing from residents and getting more information during the public hearing. My questions tonight are around the roads. And I thank Councillor Asmussen for raising parking, because that is an issue. And I note here that we have parking between the school and the field, and that if this goes ahead, I'm sure that field will get lots of use on the weekend. And so it's, of course, important to have access to parking. I'm just curious, on the road, it looks like, of course, what we've done here is we've actually taken what has now, up until now, been Queenston Avenue, and that will, looks like, form where the parking will be. And that to access the site, it looks like there's now going to be a road to the west hooking up with Dayton. I'm just wondering, is that part of this proposal? Is that what lot 3441 is, or is that to be acquired at a later date? Is that road will be built in conjunction with the school property?
Yes, the extension of Dayton down to Queenston will be constructed by this project.
Okay, good. Okay, that's great. And I look forward to getting more information at the public hearing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We've been waiting a long time, and this is good news. So thank you very much, all of you. Thank you to the School District 43 folks who are here. I wonder how this is going to end here. The motion is first reading. All in favor? Opposed? Good news. The motion carries unanimously. We'll hear a public hearing.
Next item, item 8, is a heritage revitalization agreement for 1121, 1123, and 1135 Brunette Avenue, 209 and 213 Therrien Street, and 208 Begin Street to develop a 94 apartment units, 14 townhouse units, and protect and restore the heritage red house structure in Maillardville. These are bylaws number 4592 and 4593. Staff recommendations that Council rescind second and third readings the City of Coquitlam Heritage Revitalization Agreement Authorization Bylaw number 4370 that were granted at the regular Council meeting held on November 25th, 2013. The Council rescind the first reading to City of Coquitlam Heritage Revitalization Agreement Authorization Bylaw number 4370 that was granted at the regular Council meeting held on October 21st, 2013, and abandon the bylaw. 3, rescind second and third readings to City of Coquitlam Heritage Designation Bylaw number 4372 that were granted at the regular Council meeting held on November 25th, 2013. Rescind first reading to City of Coquitlam Heritage Designation Bylaw number 4372 that was granted at the regular Council meeting held on October 21st, 2013, and abandon the bylaw. 5, give first reading to City of Coquitlam Heritage Revitalization Agreement Authorization Bylaw number 4592. First reading to City of Coquitlam Heritage Designation Bylaw number 4593, and that bylaw numbers 4592 and 4593 be referred to public hearing.
Moved by Councillor Marsden, seconded by Councillor Asmundson. I want to, I've asked the clerk to load a photo so we know what heritage we're protecting. That's it. And I want to explain to the owners how predisposed I am, and I'm not allowed to be predisposed, but I'm not comfortable with the way this thing progressed. This is a piece of our heritage here in Coquitlam. This building suffered a fire and has now suffered the neglect of a couple of years, and the suggestion that we can increase density simply by waiting and holding a building like this hostage is disappointing. I'm not saying that it's being suggested, but that's how some people are taking it, including myself. So I want to express my frustration to, I see representatives of the proponent in the audience. I want to express my frustration, and I know that other council members have expressed their frustration and may well do so now. This is not how we preserve, this isn't a heritage preservation, this isn't a good demonstration of how one would preserve heritage. Councillor Reid.
Thank you. That picture is certainly not impressive, and it's kind of a shame to see it in our neighborhood. With the addition of one more story on these buildings, what happens to any view corridor for the streets behind? How much higher is it then? 12 feet? I'm just going by feet. Yeah, 12 feet higher.
Yes, that's correct.
So that pretty well destroys the whole view corridor for half that block, because that's a big piece of property there.
Yes, it's something that we looked at in terms of the site design with the acquisition of the Trev's property, and a need, of course, to bring the Red House back to its original state and enhanced state. They are proposing additional density, and we looked at that quite a bit through the design review process before it was brought forward with staff. And yes, we're trying to orient the higher part of the building towards Brunette and have that townhouse transition between the apartment and the single-family dwellings to the north. And the site also slopes down from the north to the south towards Brunette. So point taken, the taller building, it is taller. It's similar in form and character, but not the height to the Chateau de Ville to the west in terms of an apartment building and then townhouses transitioning down to singles. But of course, it is a few stories taller as you get closer to Brunette. Also took a look at that area too. The homes that are on Beijing and Therrien also face east and west in terms of the primary views out to the street. Again, we do not want to presuppose that's going to mitigate the issue there, but we realize that in order to make the project financially viable with what the property they've acquired and the need to bring that historic house back up to its previous state, that's what they're proposing here.
Yes, my concern with this is not only the view, but there'll be, now there'll be even more shadows on the houses behind. When you look, we're going up another 12 feet, so then we're going to have shadowing on the two streets behind. And this site, the mass on this site is incredible for the size of the site. It's a busy place, and I have real difficulty with this, so I'm going to have to listen to what my fellow councillors have to say, but I think the density is getting just a little too far up there for me. And the height is my biggest. The height and the fact that there's no view corridors at all through this. The site is fully massed. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hodge.
Well, this one's a tough one for me because I'm trying to contain my anger at how this house has been left to just basically it's demolishing before our eyes. And when this was brought forward 2 years ago, there was discussions about how they were going to protect the house. And as you can see by the picture, the tarps got torn. It was only because of calls from this council and the mayor that we even got it, the envelope secured again. So there is certainly been a lot of neglect over the years. That neglect has continued over the last 2 years. So I'm not happy about that part of it. But I'm encouraged that we're once again looking at ways to finally preserve this house. But I am challenged by the cost to do this. And one of the things that I'm going to be looking to hear during the public hearing, if it goes that far, is why we have to go from 66 apartments up to 94 to basically, it looks like, from reading this, to meet the financial challenges that are here. And I don't know how that's changed. The building hasn't deteriorated that much in the 2 years, so I don't know the in and outs of why we have to do this. A lot of other developments and heritage homes have been saved throughout Millardville with just building, 3 or 4 buildings. So those are the questions I hope we will get answers to if this moves forward. That's the main one. The other thing is, the density, that's a concern on this one. The number of units, certainly the condition of the house. The other thing that I'm not clear on reading through this is there was some discussion about the community space, or the open space at the corner. I guess it's where Trev's currently sits. And it talks about, I guess, the cost of having to provide that common amenity. Was that not in the original proposal as well? That's not a new cost here, is it? Or a new something that's new? I thought that was in the original one as well, because I seem to recall asking if Trev's was going to be saved, and we said no, that we were just going to mark it as a historic spot, and that it would be a common amenity. So I'm just sort of like some direction of just what was changed between the first time this came around and now.
Mr. Dollywall has some history for us.
Great, thank you.
Through your worship, in the original proposal, prior to coming forth to council, they did not own the Trev's property. They were trying to acquire it, but were unable to. And then as we brought it for first reading, they were working to close their deal and had an agreement to have it part of the application. Prior to third reading, they had closed on the property, but that the payment that they ultimately made for that site is what made them revisit their proposal. That's why there was a long delay between third and fourth. We haven't moved anywhere since, and that's why they're back now.
So it showed as part of the project, but the land had not actually been acquired. They were still in negotiation when they came to third reading last time?
No, by third reading, they had already closed.
They knew what the cost was. They knew all of that. And now, since then, those costs presumably are one of the things that's changed here. I mean, I don't expect you to answer for the developer. I think that's a question that'll come up at public hearing. But I'm just trying to get a handle on why suddenly, to make this viable, we're increasing density on the apartments by 40% or something here. So okay, so that at least gives me some idea of what's changed there. I guess the other question I have is that if this is approved tonight, we're being asked to rescind second and third readings. I've on council now 4 years. I think this is the first time I've actually gone through that exercise of doing the rescinding second and third. What does that revert back to now? Does it go back? Is that automatic? As if we vote and do that tonight, that takes place tonight? No other changes happen until after a public hearing. Does this actually put this sort of land in sort of a limbo that the previous stuff is taken off, but the new ones aren't approved until presumably after a public hearing of fourth reading?
Through your worship, if we rescind the readings, it's basically restarting the application, and that's what staff is requesting, that we abandon these bylaws and then give first reading to a new bylaw and refer it back to public hearing should council wish.
The zoning and everything is there, but this is just the heritage revitalization agreements that were put on during that public hearing or following that public hearing.
That is correct. The original zones would still apply on the site.
And because the proposal has changed with the additional density, and I believe that the location of the red house has changed a bit. There's additional enhancements to that, and also the park. It's prudent to bring it forward as a new application. So hence the rescinding and also the first reading. Bring it back as first reading.
Okay, good. Okay, thank you for the clarification. Thank you.
Sorry, the location, point of clarification, the location of the heritage home has changed?
Yes. Yeah, it's going to be moved slightly to the east and rotated to lie east-west of Beam. Yes.
Right. Councillor Marsden.
Thank you. Similar questions to Councillor Hodge with regards to the timing of the acquisition of the Trevs, so you'll bring that back for us. Question with regards to page 4, it speaks to the density being 1.96. Current urban town housing is 0.45. So the proposals, what would be the maximum density allowed if we were to move forward? Are we changing that 0.45 and looking for a variance, or would the zoning allow higher FAR?
Yes, through your worship to Councillor Marsden, with the heritage revitalization agreements, you can vary the zoning bylaw in terms of use and density. So the proposal here, again, you sort of use a little bit of a signpost in the area, the medium density residential, for example, to the west and to the south. Those allow 4 to 8 story apartment buildings. So the density that's being proposed here, although we've heard some misgivings around council, and of course we can always work with the applicant on the actual form and character and the density and that sort of thing. But of course, we'll see the public hearing first. But it's something that we do look at in terms of how it would fit into the neighborhood. And that's in terms of the 1.96, it's probably close to what you'd see with the Mackin project. That's a few blocks to the west.
Thank you. I am interested in hearing what the public has to say about this, because I wasn't on council when the previous one came forward, so I don't perhaps share some of the same concerns with regards to the height or the change to what was proposed. One question I do have relates to the, I quote page 6, a semi-public park space. It does cause me some concern in that this is going to be park space that's open for the public but maintained by the strata, and my history with strata councils is one of a heightened level of very possessive nature. I'm being asked to pause. Okay, so with regards to this, what pieces are in place beyond the registered public right-of-way agreement would give us some form of comfort that a strata council doesn't come forth at some point and say, we're paying for the maintenance, public stay out. If it's part of our consideration of approval, I'd want some comfort.
Through the right-of-way agreement, the city would always have the right, and so would the public, to have access to the park space. All that the strata would be obligated to do is continue to do maintenance and keep it in good order.
Okay, so is there anything that would alert the public to the fact that they are welcome to be there and sit on the benches or whatever there, versus a resident, an overzealous homeowner looking, saying, that's my space, get out?
We can encourage signage to be put in place as part of this application.
More signs. Okay, all right, thank you. I look forward to, I'll support this going forward to certainly public hearing.
Thank you, and Councillor O'Neill.
Thank you. I'm going to support it going forward to a public hearing as well, and I'm very interested in seeing what the public has to think about this density. One of the questions that I have, a question I have now that I'd like to get an answer from, the present OCP designation is urban townhousing, and the requested OCP designation, no change. Is there no change needed because this will be a heritage revitalization agreement, or does something of this density actually fit into an OCP designation of urban townhousing? Which I'd be surprised, because the proposal is for quite a bit more than townhouses.
Mr. Johansson.
Yes, through your worship to Councillor O'Neill. Yes, excellent question. Again, with the HRA parameters, you are able to, in order to preserve a heritage asset, propose a use and density that may be beyond what's in the existing zoning and the land use. And again, it's something that is contextual. There's other examples where there are proposals that are brought forward that are of a higher density than what is normally allowed in a land use.
Well, that's the most common. I mean, we see that all the time in HRA.
Yeah. Again, it's something that we have looked at quite closely, but again, it's something that we can also work with the applicant if there's a feeling that might be a little too much.
So what would the, if this were completely developed under urban townhousing, I mean, how many units, maybe you can bring that information to the public hearing, how many units would you see under a non-HRA situation where this was townhouses being built here? I presume it'd be, somewhere around 20 or something like that, rather than the large number we have here. So I'd like to have that information at the public hearing if you can bring it, unless you have the answer now. No answer now. Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Asmussen.
Well, thank you. And I think a couple of Councillor Marsh and Councillor O'Neill sort of got down the line that I was talking about the present zoning, the Heritage Revitalization Agreement allows for density to save properties and changing the density in that area. It does seem, from what we approved 2 years ago, from 66 to 94, to be quite a bit over a 2-year period and seeing those costs. Now, we didn't see it get built in that period of time, so that raises some flags to me that it wasn't built. And we did see poor maintenance, poor upkeep. I've gone to the general manager of planning and Ray about a year and a half about what's being done about this place. But we're at right now. The Treb property, they hadn't acquired it, but does that acquisition at this point in time also help factor in density in this project, or was that already calculated the first time through when they were just proposing 66 units?
Through your worship, density was calculated with Trevs in the first application as well.
It was?
Yes.
That's good to know, because that sort of questions the jump from 66 to 94, if it was, because I thought if it wasn't calculated in, that could have explained some of the increase in there, because you have more density on a piece of land valued into that area. So I'll move this through to public hearing. I think it's important to go through public hearing and listen to what the public has to say. I do think there are some concerns raised around the table about the amount of increase in density. I don't think we're not opposed to increase in density in this area, and I think increase in density in the Millardville is something that we want in that area for revitalization of the downtown area and to get Millardville revitalized as a vibrant area. So I'll move this through to public hearing. Thank you.
Okay, a council member has asked the question if voting no on the 7 recommendations would enact the 6-month wait period for a new application, and would, but there would still be an active application. The recommendations 1 and 3 are to abandon bylaws, or sorry, 2 and 4 are to abandon bylaws. Those bylaws would still be at third reading if we vote on these 7 recommendations together and the vote is no. So there would still be an active application. If, on the other hand, if we're to go to public hearing, if we were to vote yes and it go to public hearing and it subsequently failed, then there would be the 6-month wait period before the applicant could make another application to do anything on the site. Okay. So the motion is the staff recommendations to rescind and put in place first reading of new bylaws. All in favor? All opposed? Motion carries with Councillors Reid and myself opposed.
Thank you, Your Worship. Item 9 was considered and carried earlier. So we move on to item 10. Item 10 is the Metro Vancouver Board and Brief for its meeting of September 18th. Our board members are here to respond to any questions that members of council may have, and the staff recommendations that council receive the brief for information.
Moved by Councillor Asmussen, second by Councillor Marsden. All in. Councillor O'Neill.
Yes, thank you. On the third page of the report, the 2016 tipping fee bylaw proposed provisions, which was approved. There are some raw numbers here for the sewage and things, and sorry, the garbage, but no percentage. Presumably these are some increases, or rates being set. Let's say number 7, special handle waste, $250 a ton. Is that a 2% increase over what it was last year, or a 20% increase? Are there various percentage increases all throughout here, or is there a trend of some sort? I wonder if anybody here knows.
Oh, there's several people here who know, and it's not a trend.
Perhaps there's some estimate. These represent a significant increase, a modest increase, and what's the impact going to be on the city?
These represent a decrease, absolutely, over a period of time ago when they were higher than this, but there was a period where we lowered them quite significantly in order to deal with an issue associated with leakage of solid waste south of the border. The US dollar sort of semi-corrected that, and this is raising it back up again.
Will that have an impact on what the city has to pay to dispose of its garbage?
I'll go to you. It will, but I don't know that it has an impact on the utility rate because we may well have anticipated elements of this. Mr. Diozegi.
Through your worship, at this point in time, we are in the process of establishing our solid waste levies for the 2016 year, and we will be reporting back to council with all our recommendations as part of the budget discussions. At this point, it appears that since the 2015 budgeted tipping fees were $109 per ton, and the proposed for 2016 by Metro Vancouver is $100 per ton, it is conceivable that the solid waste rates may remain the same as for the current year.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
It is anticipated that our costs will be lower than budgeted. Councillor Hodge.
Yeah, so the original rate was, I believe it was either 108 or 109. It went 108, went down to 80 for large loads, that's 9 tons or more. This is proposing to take it on the municipal side up from 80 to 100, rising back up to the original level for next year. The challenge on this that I particularly had at Metro was that essentially the rate for private haulers will remain at $80 for large tons. So if they're bringing in large loads, they will pay $80 for what they bring in from, say, multifamily or commercial sources, and cities will pay $100. Now, the thought behind this at Metro is that because the garbage is priced by tonnage, that municipalities were paying a variety of fees depending on how big their trucks were and how full their trucks were. So Metro proposed to make it a flat across the board, 100. But for us, that actually represents an increase because our haulers were bringing in large loads. So while they tried to sort of level the playing field between all the municipalities, what they in fact did was create a two-tier system between private haulers and those hauling civic garbage. And so that was what the discussion was about at the last Metro meeting.
So another way of putting it is that the coalition of the Federation of Municipalities is charging its own members more than it's charging outsiders who want to use its waste handling services. And it largely comes out of the failure of a bylaw at the provincial level that would have contained the garbage within Metro's system. The provincial government opted not to go that route. Bylaw 280 failed, and as a result, leakage outside of the system, primarily by rail down to Rabanco's landfill in Washington State, became the competition. So Metro Vancouver met that in order to meet its requirements to try to keep the solid waste in, first of all, solid waste separated and the recyclables and organics diverted, and the rest of it within our system.
There's no easy answer.
And we argued strenuously that this was ridiculous, but we did. Okay, there we go. Councillor Asmundson.
Just a question through to the members. The tipping fee for individual residents, has that changed, gone down or up? A couple of years ago, Metro Vancouver changed the fees for residential drop-off or at the waste transfer stations, and we've noticed in most municipalities throughout the region an increase in illegal dumping. Has Metro Vancouver looked at reducing that fee because we as the taxpayers in the regional area cities are picking up that extra cost by illegal dumping?
Metro Vancouver hasn't looked at that. I suspect it's largely because or they have looked at it, but they haven't gone that way yet. I think it's largely because the issue of illegal dumping may well be disproportionately being addressed by those communities that have a transfer station in their boundaries that charges a minimum rate, and therefore there's an incentive once you've decided not to dump it there to get rid of it quickly in the same community you've almost dumped it in. As well, the ban on certain products like electronics and mattresses has presented a problem. And I will state right now that if our residents have a mattress that they don't want to pay a fee for, to call the large item line. We have the process here in Coquitlam that allows up to 4 large items per year, per calendar year. So that's a sofa, that's a mattress, and our contractor will pick it up for free and dispose of it for you, because on the single family side, people that pay into our utility, our solid waste utility.
We still have, on the Burke Mountain, there's other areas throughout the city. We get emails from different people all the time to our staff about illegal dumping within their areas on an ongoing basis and the cost to us as the city and engineering department. Something I think that we should go back to Metro and have them review, because it is, I talked to councillors and mayors from other city around the region, and they're all suffering with that same problem. So I think it's something that needs our board members need to take a look at. The other thing under the transfer station strategy, I like the comment under B, continued development options for replacing Coquitlam transfer station. We have been sending letters for, was it, Mayor, at least 8 years now?
I've only been mayor for 7, and I've signed 7 of them. So
7,
yes.
But we were, even prior to you being mayor.
Yes.
And we keep asking Metro for something, and they're going to continue to explore options. Like, when are they going to get away from exploring and actually come up with a option? I'm sorry, I'm just a little, saw this in there, a little afraid and a little ticked at this, because there's a timeline for us on this. If we don't have a transfer station in this region, it's going to cost us a lot more money.
That is absolutely correct. After this board meeting, we did have yet another meeting with myself, an engineering representative, with the CAO from Metro and their solid waste folks to discuss the issue. They asked that our neighbors come along too, because they see the transfer station serving the Tri-Cities, which is correct. And what I can say is that they have agreed to proceed with the design of the transfer station under a couple of different options. They are saying that they have difficulty figuring out exactly what size to design the transfer station to, because they don't know whether or not the next use facility will be in or out. Our comment is that that facility is not going ahead as quickly as would otherwise be the case because of difficulties with the license that Metro itself is not granting. Suffice it to say that even under the best scenario, Coquitlam residents will be without a transfer station because the existing transfer station is under an agreement to be sold to an external party. There is some uncertainty with the exact dates as to when that external party will want that site, and we continue to sign extensions to that property transfer agreement. Suffice it to say, there is some significant uncertainty, but I do believe that we will be without a transfer station at least for some period of time. Metro did indicate that they were prepared to consider reimbursing those municipalities who are out of pocket due to extra hauling, because we will have to haul to the Surrey transfer station over the Port Mann Bridge. We have asked them to outline in detail what they are proposing as remuneration, because we do not believe it will fully compensate us for additional costs. Suffice to say that all of this is under active discussion, and there is some uncertainty in this regard.
Well, thank you, Mr. Steblin. I'd also like to point out that while we were looking for ourselves, with the transfer station not being here in Coquitlam for the Tri-Cities and we having to go to Surrey, our problem of illegal dumping will only become more exacerbated because our residents will be facing a greater cost for them if they want to dispose of their waste to cross into Surrey, which will incur, some more people will not take that route and will go the illegal dumping route, which is very unfortunate for us, the environment, and everything involved. I do find it rather strange that Metro Vancouver can complain that they don't know what size to do because they don't know what the next use facility. We've had an agreement signed by this city and Belcorp on a MRF here in Coquitlam. Their bylaw did not get approved by the provincial government. I don't know how they can legally not approve it and just sit on this. This is rather disturbing to me and to all of council and people in this region that the Metro can act in such a cavalier way on this issue. Either you have not got your bylaw passed through the provincial government, you should issue the license to them to build their facility, and maybe within that there could be some recycling facilities or whatever in that for our residents. But to use that, Mr. Steblin, as a reason that they don't know what size to build it is complete poppycock. And I thank you for your report. I don't need a reply to that. It's just my more political statement on this issue. Thank you very much.
And Councillor Asmussen utilizes a word that these council chambers haven't heard in many years, I suspect. Hardly ever. Councillor Zarrillo.
Well, I actually, in the 70s, used to love poppycock, used to get it at Christmas, so that's... just wanted to follow up on the illegal dumping. I've noticed in the past 6 months, I brought it up a couple of weeks ago, I don't think you were here, Councillor Asmussen, about the curbside dumping. I just wanted to take this opportunity to let staff know that there is a couch sitting on Gattonsbury at Ridgeway. It's actually on the road, taking up about 2 parking spots, I think. Nice red one, I saw it today. And there's also a set of dresser drawers down Gattonsby more south that's been there at least a week. So something's going on in the community because I'm seeing it everywhere, every day.
Yes, our community spends hundreds of thousands of dollars a year dealing with that issue, illegal dumping. And Councillor Hodge.
We've covered off. So I was just going to say on the illegal dumping, that was one of the concerns with the tipping fees because the tipping fees were raised significantly for small loads. That would be your pickup truck loads coming in. Metro is monitoring it. I can't remember what the statistics were, but so far they haven't seen a big jump, but they are monitoring the amount of dumping so they are looking at it. But I agree that while they may be looking at ways of compensating cities for the distance and the time for trucks to haul over to Surrey, how we would ever arrange to do any kind of compensation for the weekend pickup truckload of stuff and some of these other things, I think that will be when we will see an increase in illegal dumping, is when they can't just drive down to United Boulevard to get rid of it. Couple things, you're right, we do have the 4 times a year large pickup, but if people who are in multifamily have furniture that's in, what they for just lightly used, there is the ability to donate it down at United Boulevard. There's a Salvation Army bin down there, and that they do accept furniture, so that can be dropped off down there if you have the transportation. Obviously, if you're in a single-family home, it's great. You can phone, and the city's contractor will pick it up 4 times a year. But there are options available, and we hope that residents will use as many of these different options as they can, because illegal dumping is very expensive. It's for the city because we pay the cost to then pick it up, and in some cases we pay the fee to do the drop, such as on mattresses. That's one of the things I've suggested, that drop fee on mattresses just encourages dumping, and that's I think one of the challenges on that one. So thank you. But we continue to raise these issues at Metro.
Thank you, and I'm glad to have that discussion here. We do need our residents to understand that there are lots of options available other than illegal dumping, including United Boulevard transfer station does have well, for now anyway, some electronics and some cooking oil and various other bins, capacity to take paint and other chemicals. So start there, go online, check out where to take electronics to, and if you do notice someone that's obviously dumping something on the side of the road, that person is stealing from residents. Residents have to cover that cost. It goes on your taxes. So take a photo, report it, please. We can have a very significant fine, and we do issue those fines when we catch someone. So, and the motion is the board and brief. It's already on. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Second.
Councillor O'Neill moves adjournment, seconded by Councillor Asmundson. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Now move to the public question period. If there are any questions on tonight's agenda from members of the audience. Oh, we don't get many, so please step forward. Just so in the middle of that podium is, it looks like a light, but it's a microphone.
My name is Danny Peaker, and I live on Chapman Avenue in Coquitlam, the largest growing high-rise city in the world, I'm sure. Anyway, I just wanted to say regarding item number 6 on the agenda that I was delighted to hear Chris Wilson speak to the fact that developers can advertise suites in their buildings, in their complexes, before final reading at City Hall. To me, that's false advertising. I don't understand why you allow it.
We actually have no authority to prevent it.
You're giving them approval. I think that you probably...
We cannot deny them approval because of their...
No, I know that.
Ma'am, you asked the question. I'm just trying to answer. The Real Estate Act allows them to do that. We can't very well deny them approval on the land use. The land use is that an appropriate use of land? It's not, did the developer behave appropriately? We have criticized resoundingly developers for doing that. And I personally actually just screamed at developers for doing that because it places the public, it takes away the public's respect for the process, and it places council in a very awkward position. However, that is entirely the Real Estate Act that governs them, permits them to do that. And we're powerless to prevent them from taking out an ad to market their place even before they apply for the zoning. They can do it a month before they apply for the zoning if they want. It's much easier for us to reject it at first reading than it would be to reject it at fourth reading on the grounds that they took out an ad. We would be sued.
Well, if you're really as concerned as you say you are about public perception, you'd do something about it.
Well, I'm really concerned about the city being sued, so I'm afraid I won't do that. But I thank you very much. Are there any other speakers? Any other questions? Thank you very much.